Hello, everyone. Here are the headlines for the world today. The World Health Organization says young people could be driving recent spikes in COVID-19 cases across Europe. U.S. President Donald Trump continues to defend the use of hydroxychloroquine as a preventative against the coronavirus, despite health officials saying otherwise. Plus, Iran fires ballistic missiles from underground for the first time. A warm welcome to the program once again. I'm Akaite Afia. So we begin today over in France as the health minister, Olivier Véran, has warned people, especially the young, to be vigilant against the spread of the coronavirus in the summer. He was in Bouc and in Montigny-les-Bretonneux, southwest of Paris, to oversee the distribution and dispatch of 40 million masks for the general public to see the 8 million most vulnerable across France. Speaking to reporters after his visits, Véran urged people to comply with social distancing rules as authorities wanted to avoid another national lockdown, saying nothing says there will be a second wave and nothing says there will not be a second wave, giving Spain's Catalonia and Belgium and Germany as examples of surges and spikes in the number of cases because of young people. There is no pulling U.S. President Donald Trump away from his hydroxychloroquine. A drug scientists, including the World Health Organization, have not backed for treating for the coronavirus nor preventing it. President Trump defended the use of the drug, saying the malaria medication was only rejected as a COVID-19 treatment because he had recommended its use. His remarks come after Twitter banned his eldest son for posting a clip promoting hydroxychloroquine. There is no evidence the drug can fight the virus, and regulators warn it may cause health problems and heart problems. Last month, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, cautioned against using the drug to treat coronavirus patients following reports of serious heart rhythm problems and other health issues. The FDA also revoked its emergency use authorization for the drug to treat COVID-19. The World Health Organization says there is currently no proof that it is an effective treatment for preventing COVID-19.
It's recommendations of many other people, including doctors. Many doctors think it is extremely successful, the hydroxychloroquine, coupled with the zinc and perhaps the zithromycin. But many doctors think it's extremely good, and some people don't. Some people, I think it's become very political. I happen to believe in it. I would take it. As you know, I took it for a 14-day period, and I'm here, right? I'm here. I happen to think it works in the early stages. I can only say that from my standpoint, and based on a lot of reading and a lot of knowledge about it, I think it could have a very positive impact in the early stages.
Failed plans to withdraw about 12,000 troops from Germany following a decision by President Donald Trump, but says it will keep nearly half of them in Europe to address tension with Russia. President Trump announced his intention last month to cut the 36,000-strong U.S. troop contingents in Germany to 25,000, faulting the close U.S. ally for failing to meet NATO's defense spending target and accusing it of taking advantage of the United States on trade. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has sought, however, to present the pullout in a way that would prevent undermining NATO and its efforts to deter Russian intervention, following Moscow's 2014 annexation of the Crimean Peninsula.
The current EUCOM plan will reposition approximately 11,900 military personnel from Germany, from roughly 36,000 down to 24,000, in a manner that will strengthen NATO, enhance the deterrence of Russia, and meet the other principles I set forth. Of the 11,900, nearly 5,600 service members will be repositioned within NATO countries, and approximately 6,400 will return to the United States, though many of these or similar units will begin conducting rotational deployments back to Europe. These changes will achieve the core principles of enhancing U.S. and NATO deterrence of Russia, strengthening NATO, reassuring allies, and improving U.S. strategic flexibility and EUCOM operational flexibility.
If you could give us a better understanding of that, and if it comes out.
Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards have fired ballistic missiles from underground for the first time as a part of an annual military drill, Amirali Hajizadeh. This was made known by the head of the aerospace division of the Guards as footage of the exercise was aired by a national broadcaster. Footage purporting to be one of the missiles shows clouds of dust before the missile streaked into the sky. The military drill in the Gulf, which began on Tuesday, July 28th, comes at a time of high tension between Tehran and Washington. The U.S. military said the drill caused two bases with American troops in the region to go on heightened alert and said Tehran's missile launches were irresponsible. There have been periodic confrontations in the Gulf in recent years between the Guards and the U.S. military, which has accused the Guards Navy of sending fast attack boats to harass U.S. warships as they pass the Strait of Hormuz. As presidential candidate Joe Biden prepares to announce his running mate and the U.S. continues to fight for equal rights and justice, the world celebrates a champion of justice and voting rights, Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis. So Maria joins us now on the program. Maria, great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So what more can you tell us about the remains of civil rights leader John Lewis making the journey to its final resting place?
Well, today you will see that he will be in the state capital, Georgia. He will lie and rest there for today before the final service tomorrow in Atlanta at the famous Ebenezer Baptist Church. So that will be the conclusion of the celebration of the life of John Lewis.
Well, a lot of African Americans feel he paved the way for the America that we see today. He, alongside Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders of his day. They fought for equal rights, but looking at America now, is it anywhere near what Mr. Lewis envisioned?
Well, what Mr. Lewis envisioned was an America that it had voting rights. I mean, when he was standing there with Dr. King, and as we all see in the famous pictures of him being beaten crossing the bridge in Selma, Alabama, and when those days prior to African Americans having the right to vote, and the long lines that existed and all the varied restrictions that were put in place in order for an African American to vote, I think that many of the initiatives that he fought for have been achieved. And if you see the famous picture that's become famous now of him just a few weeks ago standing at the Black Lives Matter in the middle of Washington, D.C. with the mayor of Washington, standing there almost as if it was a changing of the guards, and he was giving and passing on the torch to all of those who are initiating and who are moving forward with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's almost as if the civil rights movement, that era has now moved on to those who are fighting for equal justice at the Black Lives Matter. There's still much work to be done. Of course, he was a champion for the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act just a few years ago, and so I think that much of his work will continue to live on, but as you said, has his vision truly been accomplished? I think that much of what he hoped for has, but I think that he still has much hope in the future and Americans today being able to help push the rights for all people, African Americans specifically, to move forward.
Yes, and so let's just take a quick pause here and get a little bit more details about the stories going on in the U.S.
Congressman John Lewis lies in state here in Washington, D.C., as he will be buried in his home state of Atlanta, Georgia. As America is preparing for the 2020 elections, many Americans are thanking John Lewis for his work and his service on voter rights for African Americans.
The reason I come down here is to show homage to someone who helped pave the way for me to live the life that I'm living, for me to attend the schools that I'm living, for me to just enjoy life as a free black man in America. as free as society will allow me to be. So I just believe that we're supposed to show homage to those that have paved the way. And he is one of our legends that have just crossed over to be part of our ancestors now.
The first sign I got from John Lewis, they had a rally. The lady from Selma, the House Representative person from Selma, had a voting right march, but it was held on the grounds right over here across from his building. He pulled up in the car to support her. And this is what came from that rally that they had. And this sign is what I made for my grandchildren, because we've been through a lot of marches. And we were down at Black Lives Matter Plaza yesterday when he came past. And the top part was why. And at the beginning is the picture is of shoes with a lot of names, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and go on forever. And at the bottom it says, "Thank you, John Lewis, for all those times you put your body on the line for us to be able to vote, for me to be able to walk the streets of Washington, D.C., because this is still a racist place. But he made it so it'd be a little easier that I could walk in any restaurant that I want to go to, because he did the lunch counter. He was part of that. I could get on any bus or any public transportation and go anywhere and sit anywhere because of him doing a freedom ride all the way down to Mississippi with the buses burning and everything. So that's why I'm here, and that's what he means to me. For no John Lewis, who knows where the black race would be now. And it would not have been no Barack Obama. Excuse me, President Barack Obama.
As many Americans and those from all across the world have come to pay respect to Congressman Lewis, what's most important is the work that he did toward creating equal rights in the U.S. and advocating for equal rights across the world.
Well, Maria, in your report, you talked a lot about John Lewis and the effect he's had on the American country. And, moving with that into the elections coming up now and all of the racial tension going on in the country, President Trump appears to be slipping in the polls, and Democratic candidate Joe Biden's ratings appear to have been boosted, especially during these anti-racism protests. But we have seen a number of Americans in elections, candidates coming from behind to eventually take the lead in an election night. So how much trust should one put in the pre-election polls, and can President Trump turn the tide if he wants to?
I think this is going to be a historic election, as we said before. But I mean, this is really one where you are seeing major tension in the country. And so, as you said, presidential candidate Joe Biden is leading in the polls. And I think what will even prepare him more is what he's preparing for to be able to announce his running mate. Now, if he has a strong woman candidate he said he will be having, he could potentially see that what we're seeing in the pre-polls to actually come to fruition on election day. But again, President Trump is also pushing very hard for the vaccine for the coronavirus to move forward and to be done prior to the elections. And so if that happens, we will see probably a very tight race, and potentially we could see something that I think many Americans are a little concerned and afraid about, especially those who are supporting Joe Biden, are very concerned to see if that vaccine comes through. Those who might say today that they're not voting for President Trump, will they then change their minds and vote for President Trump as they did in 2016?
Well, we'll be keeping our eye on a situation there in the United States. Maria, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break. With kids being at home for weeks on end due to the coronavirus, how much learning are they really doing? Well, some Indonesian teachers think they have found a way to keep kids engaged in school. Stay with us. A warm welcome back to The World Today. Moving over to Malaysia, the former Prime Minister Najib Razak on Tuesday was found guilty of abuse of power, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering in a case related to SRC International, a former unit of State Investment Fund Malaysia Development Berhad, better known as 1MDB. It would be the first in several corruption trials against the former government official. As we noted on Tuesday as well, this case involves 42 million ringgits, that's about 9.9 million US dollars, deposited into Najib's personal bank account from SRC International, in which Najib faced 7 charges, including criminal breach of trust, money laundering, and abuse of power. Judge Mohammed Nazlan Mohammed Ghazali ruled that the defense has failed to raise reasonable doubt against the prosecution's case, which led him to find Najib guilty on all 7 charges. Mr. Najib was handed a 12-year jail sentence and a fine of 49.4 million US dollars for those charges made against him. 10 years of jail for each of the 3 criminal breach of trust and 10 years of jail for each of the 3 money laundering. But he ordered the sentences to concurrently, meaning Najib will face only up to 10 years in jail. We just wanted to lay down some of the background there before we get into this conversation with the managing editor of online news medium 2213, Pearl Lee. She joins us now from Kuala Lumpur. Pearl, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. So this is a huge case. Though the wheel of justice ground slowly up until this point, but justice anyways. Do Malaysians feel the same about that justice?
Yes, I mean, but it also really depends on which faction we are looking at or we are talking about, because generally those who voted against Najib Razak's administration and coalition, which is Barisan Nasional in 2018, they were rejoicing and they labeled yesterday's decision as a triumphant day because we are bringing a former prime minister who has been embroiled in such a huge global controversy to books. But at the same time, you've got Najib Razak supporters, also the people themselves, who says that the sentence accorded to Najib Razak was not befitting of a former premier who has served as Prime Minister for the nation in the past 9 years.
Well, looking ahead, how exactly will Mr. Najib serve his sentence? I mean, despite his age, will he actually end up going to prison?
Well, age is really not a factor here right now, because what has happened is that despite Najib Razak being sentenced to 12-year jail and fine of ringgit Malaysia 210 million yesterday, the execution has been stayed pending an appeal. So Najib Razak will be filing an appeal in the next 14 days, and it's going to be a rather lengthy procedure because he will appeal at the Court of Appeal, and if things is not in his favor, he will continue his appeals in the federal court, and this is definitely going to be a very lengthy process. It could even take years. And that being said, it should be noted that Najib Razak has actually 5 court cases, and the decision yesterday was just 1 court case, and he has another 4 pending court cases, which is ongoing trial at the moment.
And this case has been considered historical in Malaysia. So can you tell us a little bit more about the impact it's having on Malaysians in the country?
Yes. Well, the impact on this case has had in Malaysia over the past 5 years has been huge in terms of economically. We've had investors shying away from Malaysia. We've also had billions being siphoned out of the country. So financially and economically, the country has been impacted. But we're also looking at, from a political standpoint, Najib Razak is part of a coalition which has ruled Malaysia for 61 years, Barisan Nasional. And but for this 1MDB fiasco, people would not have voted Barisan Nasional out, I believe, because Najib, the ruling coalition, which is Barisan Nasional, to a large extent, lost the last general election only because of Najib Razak and the 1MDB fiasco. So moving forward, anything is possible right now because the Malaysian political front right now is very fluid. We could be looking at a possible snap election happening as well. And anything is possible. I'm not suggesting that charges will be dropped against him, but anything is possible. And because the Attorney General basically has the sole discretionary powers whether to proceed or not proceed in a particular case. If there is a change in government, it is something to be considered perhaps right now.
Okay, well, Pearl, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
A kindergarten in Indonesia is exploring innovative teaching methods just to make sure children continue learning throughout this pandemic. Is it working? Let's take a look.
Transparent tents, online courses, and home visits with portable social distancing barriers. A kindergarten in Indonesia is exploring innovative teaching methods to make sure children's education is not hampered by the pandemic. A private kindergarten with 135 students in Indonesia's central Java province only allows 6 pupils to school each day. Accompanied by their parents for face-to-face classroom sessions, the children are kept in the safety of transparent boxes made from plastic sheets.
The transparent box is one of our commitments of prioritizing health protocols.
All visitors are required to wear masks, face shields, gloves, and have their body temperature checked before entering the school and the boxes, and also undergo disinfection before and after each use. For the children, it only makes learning fun.
No, I'm not bored at all because I can do Zoom call with all of my friends. I can also meet my teacher. I love it so much.
A rotation system makes sure each student attends a class every 2 weeks, but if the parents are not comfortable with sending the children to school, they can choose to tutor them at home themselves with study materials provided by the kindergarten.
Well, it does seem like those innovative teaching methods are keeping the kids engaged. That's all for the world today. I'm Akaite Afia. Stay safe.